Pennsylvania Avenue.
And joining me now is House Majority Leader Steny and House Minority Leader John Boehner. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Hey, good morning. So you got a letter last night. I actually think I got it before you guys did.
I think you did.
But from President Obama requesting $50 billion in emergency spending for state and local governments. Leader Hoyer, you have said that there is spending fatigue on Capitol Hill. Can you get this passed?
Well, I think it's accurate that there's spending fatigue, not only on Capitol Hill, but around the country. People are concerned about the debt level, and we are as well. But clearly, you cannot not continue to stimulate an economy that is still struggling to get out of the deep ditch that we found it in about 18 months ago. What the president is saying is that we need to expend additional dollars to make sure that we don't have significant layoffs in the next few months, which will again depress the economy. So that I understand what he's saying. I have asked the White House to look at the package that we ordered, the Recovery and Reinvestment Act that we passed, approximately $800+ billion. There are clearly funds in there that have not been expended, to see whether or not there are some available for this more immediate priority, and some that may not be quite as immediate.
Leader Boehner, the president in his letter, that if this does not pass, the economy, there's a risk that the economy will slide back into recession. Do you agree?
Listen, I'm concerned about the plight of teachers, firemen, police who face the real possibility that they may be laid off. But to send this letter up here on a Saturday night with no opportunity to cut spending elsewhere in the budget strikes me as a little different. Steny and I and other leaders were at the White House on Thursday, and this subject never came up. There was no indication this was going to happen, and I'm asking myself, why is this happening on Saturday night? The fact is that the spending spree in Washington is continuing to run unabated. The American people are screaming at the top of their lungs, stop. And to move this without finding other offsets in spending, I think is irresponsible. It's just putting more debt on the backs of our kids and our grandkids. And it really begs the question is, why don't we have a budget this year? You know, we've not, the House has failed, not failed, in the modern era to move a budget. And this appears to be the first time in the modern era that the House is not even going to consider a budget.
Leader Hoyer, if I could just say, one of the theory is that you don't want to make vulnerable Democrats vote for another spending bill, and that's why for the first time since 1974 isn't going to be a House budget. Is that not true?
Whatever the theory may be, Jake, the fact of the matter is my friend Mr. Boehner voted for $2 trillion during the Bush administration of unfunded spending. So when he says this cascade of spending...
but you agree that this should be offset with spending cuts?
Would hope that we do that, yes. However, what I said was money that is appropriated in the Recovery and Reinvestment Act that has not yet been spent could be spent now on these priority items. Nobody wants to see 300,000 teachers laid off, or fire and police laid off. That's not good for the economy. It's not good for our kids. It's not good for the safety of our communities. So the president's absolutely right in terms of this being critically important spending, and we're going to work on getting that. I personally believe that if we have dollars that are not yet expended in the Recovery Act, that we can apply to this immediate need and then look to expenditures in the long term for investments. I think we ought to do that, but we can't stimulate and depress at the same time.
Every family knows that in a tough time, it's more important to have a budget, not less. And if you think that they're going to move a budget on Capitol Hill, you must obviously believe that Elvis is still alive.
Well, I'd like to move on to another topic other than Elvis.
But, as you know, the Republicans didn't have a budget in 2002, 04, 06.
The House has never failed to pass a budget in the modern era.
And the American public had no idea about that. It's budgets that pass.
We're missing a great opportunity to
bills
cut spending and to get the economy going again.
And we're doing that.
That's why I gave the president a letter this week with 100 economists signed a letter saying that cutting spending now will, in fact, help get the economy moving again.
I would like, in terms of getting things moving again, I would like to move to a different topic, which is...
But can I conclude on the deficit? Because the president, we've adopted statutory pay-go, which they jettisoned.
And you've ignored it every time you've had a chance to use it.
The president sent down a freeze in spending, and he established a commission to look at long-term spending control. All of that is positive movement.
Let's move on to the oil spill.
Spending cut now.
Got it. Let's move on to the oil spill because I want to get your reaction. On Tuesday, the BP chief operating officer, Doug Sutton, told the Associated Press that the flow should decrease to a relative trickle by Monday or Tuesday. That's by tomorrow or the day after that. Doug Sutton said that. I don't know what a relative anything means when it comes to this oil spill, but there's no indication that it's only going to be trickling by tomorrow or the next day. And I just want to know, as the leaders of your respective parties on Capitol Hill, are you finding it tough to believe anything these guys from BP have to say anymore?
Certainly, BP has not been accurate in its representations. It has been misleading in its representations. What has happened is outrageous, and the American public are correctly very, very angry. It has been rushing every asset that we have available, worked on. The public hopes you write a trickle. I don't know what a trickle is. But certainly a very, very substantial reduction. BP said they could handle 250,000 barrel spill. They weren't able to handle what they said was initially a 5,000, which then went to 20 or 25, and now we think is a much greater spill than that.
Well, Steny, guess what? Okay. I agree wholeheartedly with you. The American people want this oil leak stopped now. They want to know what happened. They want the Gulf cleaned up, and they want it all done now. And I just think that BP ought to be held responsible for all of the costs that are involved in this. I said that right from the beginning, and I continue to believe that. I'm not sure that the federal government, though, isn't also responsible. The laws that were in place, the materials that should have been in place for a spill this size were not. And the reaction, I think, on the part of the administration has been slow. But having said that, it's time to get this thing stopped now.
All right, so just to clear up what you said earlier this week, or on Thursday, you said that the BP and the federal government should take full responsibility. To clarify that, you think BP needs to pay?
I have said from the beginning, BP needs to pay for the entire cost of this. But the federal government, this is a failure of government. Government is there to protect our shores, to protect our environment, and there's been a real failure here. We've been asking for 55 days. Where's the inspection reports from this rig? The administration won't give them to us.
The Democrats are pushing a bill to lift the liability. Right now it's at $75 billion. Democrats are pushing a bill to lift the liability cap. Do you support that?
I believe that lifting the liability cap on BP and for this bill is appropriate. I have concerns.
So lift it entirely, BP?
Absolutely. They should be held responsible for every of this cost.
Let me say a few words. First of all, Republicans have been holding up lifting the cap in the Senate from the 75 million, minuscule sum, as we see, to 10 billion. Secondly, I think that John Boehner is right in this respect. The psychology of neglect in terms of regulatory oversight that was put in the Bush administration, which led to failure, insurance prices going way up, and oil companies thinking they could do whatever they wanted because the drill baby drill crowd, all they wanted to do was to drill. So I think John's right. I think the regulatory psychology of the last administration was not appropriate, and there were mistakes made in this administration.
How long you can blame the Bush administration? Come on.